Welcome to the Workology podcast, where we discuss the science and art of the workplace, gain powerful insights, resources, and perspectives on the industries of human resources and recruiting. Join your host, Jessica Miller-Merrill, chief blogger of bloggingforjobs.com, for a 45-minute in-depth and no-holds-barred look into the future of our most powerful business asset, the employee. And now, here's your host, Jessica, with this episode of Workology.
A 2014 Aberdeen report on talent acquisition found that 60% of best-in-class recruiting teams are taking a proactive approach to their talent acquisition and hiring efforts versus 44% that were surveyed in 2013. Aberdeen's research is showing a regression of talent acquisition practices, and personally, I'm beginning to feel a shift in certain industries and companies who are experiencing extreme competition for best-in-class candidates. One such proactive recruiting strategy I'm seeing companies adopt is the addition of a CRM, or candidate relations management technology, which is something my guest today knows a lot about. Welcome to the Workology podcast. It's great to have you on our podcast as part of the Blogging for Jobs and Recruiters Lounge blog family. As I mentioned, my guest, who today is Marylene Delbourg-Delphis, she is the CEO of Talent Circles, one of the most transformative candidate and recruitment engagement platforms in the market today. Marylene has previously been a guest on the Workology podcast. Welcome back, Marylene. Tell us a little bit about you and your background for folks who might not have been able to catch the earlier podcast.
Thank you again, Jessica. As you said, I'm the CEO and co-founder of Talent Circles. I started my first company in France. It was the first relational and graphical database management system on Macintosh. Then I came to Silicon Valley at the end of the 80s, and I never left this country. I kept my French accent, so please accept my apologies. Basically, over the past 25 years or so, I have been a serial tech CEO as well as an operational board member for tech companies, of which I was not always a CEO, and I always worked on new technologies capable of transforming the lives of the people for the better.
Which I think is a great segue into recruiting and how we can make it better, particularly. So what has made you believe that recruiting can be transformed?
Well, at a high level, it was clear to me that it had to be transformed. When candidates can't find jobs, even if there are openings a few miles away, when companies can't find candidates, even though serious research, and I'm thinking of the works of Peter Capelli and his team at Wharton, shows that the skills gap is nowhere what is generally assumed. And when you see an industry where the cost of bad hire being people who quit after 1 year, is as large as the entire market itself, that is around $100 billion, you can't help thinking that there is a systemic problem. At a more personal level, I realized why I had been so frustrated with the candidates that recruiters had been sending my way. They had sent me resumes, not people. I could see that they had tools to process resumes, but nothing enabling them to connect to people, assess their potential, assess their ability or their desire to grow in the job, or their cultural fit within a company. In other words, they had nothing that would enable them to know the candidates better and build a relationship with them.
Well, I think it's a perfect topic today. As I mentioned, we're going to be talking about a candidate relationship management, or CRM, but not what we think about in marketing when we think of customer relationship management. This is candidate relationship management. Can you explain for us the role of a candidate relationship management platform in recruiting today?
So a CRM, candidate relationship management platform, I would say is the very heart of recruiting, because recruiting is all about relationship. Of course, the value and the power of the notion of relationship in candidate relationship management depend on how you define relationship. So the simplest definition would be the fact of having something in common. So it can be a loose linkage, or it can be also a real match, almost a kinship. It can be felt as one-sided. It can be felt as mutual interest. Traditionally, CRMs have only managed one-sided relationship. Most CRMs are just about getting candidates' contact information. So your CRM is today, most of the time, an email database. And when you have new jobs, you can send notifications to people who once connected with you. Is this sufficient for the 21st century? Obviously not. We live in a social era. People want to connect. If you do not connect back, chances are that people will unfollow you. The job market is more favorable to job seekers today. More candidates can choose where they want to work. Skilled candidates are not waiting for you. You are looking for them. And third, the demographic change is even more important. Millennials will compose the majority of the workforce as early as next year. A recent research sponsored by Elance Odesk and Millennial Branding shows that over the past few years, Gen X hiring managers have consistently underestimated how much millennials prized being part of a good team and working on exciting projects. And in the same research, more than half of the hiring managers agreed that it was difficult to find and retain millennial labor. Nearly 80% of the millennials surveyed said that they would consider quitting their existing jobs and working for themselves in the future. So you really have to build a bond with people if you want to attract them and meet their expectation, if you want to ultimately retain them. So the whole landscape has changed. Employers are not in the driver's seats anymore. And the technology that recruiters have used for the last 20 years won't cut it. So they are out of sync with our times. This means, one, that one-sided relationships are over. You must truly engage. In a one-way relationship, you ask candidates to interact with you, and you assume that they will. In fact, they won't. Or the ones who will are primarily the ones who are desperate for a job. They represent a fraction, barely 20%, of the people you want to be connected with. So the new generation of CRM must enable you to build a rapport with both active and passive candidates. CRM Web 3.0 venues must be able to foster conversation. You have to make sure that candidates want to hear from you, and so you have to enable them to opt into your talent network or your talent community. In other words, if you want candidates to be interested in you, you must be interesting to them and proactively nurture the interest in you.
That's a new concept. Normally it's a one-way conversation, right? And now it's a two-way conversation. And as you said, a relationship. One thing I just wanted to point out rather quickly, and I'll post the link over on this podcast. If you just put CRM into the search box of bloggingforjobs.com, you'll be connected to this podcast. One statistic that I found interesting as of recent is that the average time to fill, or the average time that a job opening is open right now at present, is 58.1 days. So the market, as Marylene mentioned, is very candidate focused. They are in the driver's seat, and recruiters and talent acquisition teams are looking for other ways to engage and establish those relationships so that we can shorten the time to fill and find those really great folks. I'm happy to report, as I mentioned earlier, that I'm seeing a move from reactive recruiting practices, what I call post and pray strategies in talent acquisition, to a more proactive approach in recruiting and hiring. And what I wanted to know from Marylene is, how does a candidate relationship management platform aid in this new sort of realm or this move towards proactive recruitment?
Maybe allow me to first mention the difference between reactive and proactive recruiting.
Excellent.
Reactive recruiting is this: you have a job to fill and you post it hoping to get candidates. In other words, you show your interest in candidates only when you need them. The end result is that in many cases, as Jessica just said, you hope and pray. Proactive recruiting entails that you build talent pools or talent communities before you have job openings or any job position to fill. Now, building talent pools is not enough per se. If you tell people, leave us your email or your resume, we will contact you when we have a position, you're not going to create much enthusiasm. Candidates have a long experience of giving their resumes and never hearing back. So if your CRM is just as much as a dark hole as your ATS, you're not going to accomplish anything. Being proactive means attracting candidates with the right message where they are, in live environments, in your own company, or on social network. Tracking how your attraction strategy is faring and adapting your message to attract the population you want to have at any given point. And engaging your base by making candidates feel valuable and part of your brand. So proactive recruiting starts with a solid employment branding strategy. Now, employment branding is not about throwing global marketing slogans and talking at people. It is about talking to people and offering a message that resonates with them. So your brand is not just a show to be seen from afar. It must be present, inspiring, and immersive at all times. Your employment branding initiative must be continued pursued inside your network and create a bridge between the public persona of your brand and your internal corporate identity. So you're not simply addressing an audience, an anonymous bunch of people. You address individuals who voluntarily started a connection with you. So it's not enough to tell them what your company is about in general. It's critical to show to them what it is to work in your company. You must offer them interesting and useful information. For example, you can offer targeted documents to download, invite them to webinars, showcase videos of existing employees recounting their day in the life of your company. In other words, you have to be candidate-centric, and you have to offer content to which candidates can relate to as individuals. So proactive recruiting requires that you continuously engage with your talent pool in multiple ways. Posting jobs is only a very small part of the story. You won't have jobs for all the people who are interested in you, but you can encourage them to share your job with their own private networks and encourage them to frequent your community on a regular basis.
I think community is such an important part of a candidate relationship management platform, and taking the time to really understand and getting personal with your audience, and not personal by me saying like, I want to know your, weight, height, and how many kids you have. We can't ask those questions as part of the hiring process, but we can provide them insights into our organization, and we can take some more of a personal approach by really catering the conversations and just providing a personal kind of Q&A type format with a lot of the technologies and tools and resources that Marylene is mentioning today. I want to talk and go back a little bit about the other CRM, the customer relationship management platform that we often hear about when we think about CRM. And personally, and one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on this podcast today and talk about the difference between candidate versus customer is because I feel like, and I'm seeing a lot more noise and conversations around recruitment, but they're treating it more of a CRM as in a customer relationship management tool. So what I'd like to know is, how is this, the candidate relationship management platform that we're talking about today, different than the other CRM, which is often used in sales and marketing?
That's a great question. In a way, the candidate relationship management and customer relationship management are not really different. In all cases, it entails customizing communication with other people to make sure that they maintain their interest in you. The difference is that for an HR CRM, you start with far fewer goods to sell. The number of jobs that you will offer is nowhere comparable to the number of products you can sell. If you have 1,000 jobs to fill, chances are that you are selling services and products by the million. So when you have one job to fill, you must touch the hearts and minds of 50 to 100 people. And if you want to make sure that they will not be disgruntled not to have the job, you must offer an exceptional candidate experience. So the candidate must learn something valuable in the process and still remain a fan of your company. So this candidate will still recommend your organization to his or to her friends, will still attend your webinars, your live networking events, or share your content. In fact, you can include sales and marketing CRM components within your HR CRM. In many cases, your candidates can be your customers, so nothing prevents you from creating reward and coupon inside your candidate CRM.
Interesting. And I'm seeing more of this sort of move towards candidates as customers. Now, I wanted to ask you about a little history lesson, if we can, and talk about both the CRM for HR is kind of what I'm going to refer to it now, because candidate relationship management platform is kind of a mouthful. And I wonder, did the CRM for HR and the CRM in sales and marketing appear at the same time? What's the history of these?
So the notion of digital Rolodexes and databases for direct marketing first appeared in the 80s and was pioneered by Robert and Kate Kirstenbaum. In 1986, ACT introduced the notion of contact management software, CMS. So the name ACT was initially an acronym for Activity Control Technology. It sounds so old today. And then it stood for Automated Contact Tracking, and that later became CMS, and a little bit later, CRM. So Tom Siebel is usually credited for creating the acronym CRM, Customer Relationship Management, around 1996. HR had a parallel history. In fact, recruiters were always primarily in relationship management and Rolodexes, because recruiting was first and foremost a referral and neighborhood affair with advertising in local newspapers. Until the advent of transactional databases in the early 90s, recruiting was relationship-based far more than what sales and marketing ever were, actually. So it was by no means about resumes. A lot of employees learned on the job and were even self-taught. In fact, relationship-based recruiting is the actual history of recruiting until it disappeared and until our industry thought they could have a CRM just as sales and marketing. So I believe that Alice Snell was one of the first to speak of CRM for HR in the early 2000s in an article that she wrote in ERE. And she was recommending to organizations to build, and I quote, a careers website that addresses a segmented candidate stream that will capture valuable candidates more efficiently and bring them into a fully functioning candidate relationship management database. But she was actually speaking of database. But I think she is one of the first to have spoken about a CRM for HR. In 2005, Michael Homula suggested the notion of talent relationship management, TRM, also in ERE. But I think that by then the notion of CRM in HR was pretty much established. And I noticed quite a few articles by Kevin Wheeler at the time, who was listing 6 ways to make your CRM efforts better. And it included building channels, doing local promotions, buying an inexpensive contact manager, using your own employees, using your alumni, and keeping track of all candidates. Since then, of course, the world has changed immensely. In 2005, social was barely starting. Today, any CRM must power what I like to designate as the 9 C's of a successful social recruiting strategy, meaning continuity. So you must give the same image outside your community and inside your community. You must have a consistent message. You must express a culture. You must be candidate-centric. You must foster conversation. You must have a very active content marketing strategy. And of course, you must compute all these elements and have extended analytics. So this was a topic of a white paper that we wrote and is available on our site under the name The Candidate Social Experience.
And we will include a link on bloggingforjobs.com under this podcast directly to the white paper that Marylene's referring to. That is honestly extremely fascinating. I'm taking notes as you're talking. I don't feel like I can learn enough from just all the great information and history of the CRM that you're sharing with us today. One of the things that I talk a lot about when we're talking about the importance of building a talent community or a talent network is the importance of fresh data. And I know that you and I have had many conversations about this, and I wanted to ask you to share with our readers, why is fresh data so important in the new CRM model of proactive recruiting and hiring?
Well, tell me how appealing stale data can be. It can't, okay? So as a recruiter, you want to relate to people. You want to know the latest about them. For example, if they just sign up for a new job, they're unlikely to be interested in your company. And so if you talk to them, you're just bothering them. It's so easy to get fresh information today that not getting that information simply undermines your credibility. So giving the ability to your candidates to update their profile in your CRM is just common sense. And if they do not frequent your network as often as you might like, it's also very easy to ask them to update their profile through a branded email. So today, there is simply no reason to operate on stale data.
Agreed. And with all the information that's being shared, and it's expected now, especially the best in class candidates that we're trying to, hunt and find and really develop that relationship with, they're expecting that we're going to go the extra mile to engage them or find that customized information so it's accurate and up to date. One of my favorite graphics that I've developed and designed in part of because of you and I's conversations is the new model of the candidate pipeline, where companies use a combination of engagement, relationships, and the fresh data to help qualify and reach the most qualified candidate. I will include a link on the podcast information here, but you can go over to the Talent Circles blog. So it's just blog.talentcircles.com, and just put in the right-hand search box over there on the site, which I write 2 or 3 times a week. Just put in candidate, let's go ahead and put in fresh data, and it'll be able to direct you right to that graphic. I feel like we probably need to add, and I'll add this to the to-do list maybe, a graphic on the 9 C's of social recruiting as well. Can you explain to us how Talent Circles technology helps to build a candidate pipeline while also engaging and qualifying your best candidates for the roles at your organization?
In Talent Circle, you can create talent pipelines using circles or the tag manager, or even storing and saving searches. So you can segment your network into circles. Look at circles as a sub-network, which there are sub-networks, and each of them have their own branding, their own video, their own announcements, their own blog posts, their own events, their own document repositories, and of course, their own job posting or skill questionnaires. So a circle is the container to create and nurture a talent pipeline. And this talent pipeline is, very focused. These circles can be public. So this means that your candidates can subscribe to these circles. So when anything happens in these circles, the candidates who have subscribed to them are automatically notified. You can also create circles that are not public and are invitation only. So you can create your own sub-selection of candidates that will access these circles, and you can groom these candidates as much as you want. And you can also create completely private, confidential circles and assign candidates to these circles. You can also create tags and define subsets of people. For example, all the VIP recommended, or all the friends and family of current employees, or candidates who are likely to be available in, say, 90 days if you use Talent Circle for contract workers. Of course, at all times, you can send branded emails to your circles or tag candidates. So, for example, if you have 10 job openings and have 10,000 potential suspects or candidates, you can send 10,000 emails. You can engage as often as you want, and you can measure all the aspects of this engagement. Check how many candidates responding to your email campaign, how many candidates invited friends of theirs to join your talent network, how many people retweeted your post, your job opening, etc. So engagement is the first step for qualifying people. And to further qualify them, you can create as many scored skills questionnaire as you want. You can video interview them individually or in group, share the videos with hiring manager, and also ultimately evaluate how committed a given candidate is based on his or her frequentation of your network. When a candidate tells you that they always wanted to work for your company, but if they never showed up in your community, chances are that these candidates are making it up. As you well know, skills are only one thing. Attitude is just as important. And in his book, Hire for Attitude, Mike Murphy says that in his research on about 20,000 new hires, 46% of them failed within 18 months. But even more surprising was that the failure rate was not due to a lack of skill. It was in 89% of the cases due to attitudinal deficits, a problem in the attitude, cultural fit with the company. And people had very low emotional intelligence, were not motivated, and had no reason in the first place to be in that company.
I want to go back to something that you mentioned because we've talked on a previous podcast on employment branding strategies with Bridget Webb, where we talked about the ROI of employment branding. And one of the things I like about talent circles in particular is when you said earlier that you can tie your marketing campaign. So that email that you sent or that message that you sent out around some job postings directly to those people within your network. So the number of retweets, posts, job openings, the people within your network, we can tie that directly to. And that is a great example of ROI when it comes to employment branding, which I feel is kind of an elusive thing that a lot of people right now are really trying to kind of wrap their heads around.
May I add something? Basically, look at your candidates as evangelists for your company.
Perfect. I absolutely so true. I want to take a little bit of a reset here. This is Jessica Miller-Merrill, and you are listening to the Workology podcast, powered by Blogging for Jobs. Today's topic is all about the CRM. And when I mean CRM, I mean Candidate Relationship Management. And I'm here with my guest, Marylene Delbourg-Delphis. You can connect with Marylene on Twitter at MDDELPHIS or MD Delphis. What are some common misconceptions with the CRM? Why is a database simply not the best option for engaging best-in-class candidates, especially if you were focused on not just a database, but also the candidate experience?
So many people want to have a CRM just because they are frustrated with the ATS. And basically, they end up adding yet another database to the ATS, which is also a database and could be perfectly sufficient. So you duplicate what you already have. If you want a CRM in 2014, it has to be a modern CRM, meaning a system that is social, allows for as many interactions as you want with candidates, allows you to send as many emails as you want when you have new job openings, allows you to video interview candidates, host employment branding events, and career fairs. So today, a CRM is all about the candidate experience, and this candidate experience must be social through and through.
Your CRM can't just be another email list of people that you've exported from recent applications from your ATS or people that you have engaged at a job fair. It needs to be more interactive and be focused on branding, but also the relationship with the candidate.
Yes, and actually I would add something. You already have in your ATS a lot of people you could reconnect with. So what you can do is import stale data from the ATS into Talent Circles, for example, and then send an email asking people to update their profile and start to build a relationship. So in many cases, all the candidates who could have been disgruntled because you never talk to them, they could have a very good surprise. And then all of a sudden, oh, wow, they still know about me. And so then you ask them to opt into your community, and all of a sudden you have a live profile of these people.
I like the suggestion, and I think that this is also great if, and probably many of our listeners have multiple applicant tracking systems right now. It blows my mind when I hear that somebody has 47 or 17, but I know you guys are out there and I feel your pain. So exporting the data, candidate data from your multiple applicant tracking systems and putting them in one talent community or CRM with Talent Circles allows all the information to no longer be stale because we're asking them to update, but then we're unifying that information in one place and then establishing that relationship or reconnecting with them, and hopefully we will be working towards repairing that relationship instead of just leaving them to the black hole where they have to make their own judgments and frustration lives. One of the points of confusion for companies today is these companies who are government contractors and are required to complete an affirmative action plan or AAP. I have a couple blog posts that will be going live in the next couple weeks all about affirmative action. And I wanted to ask you, Marylene, how can this new generation of CRM help in our affirmative action planning and reporting efforts?
So it's important to look at the U.S. Department of Labor website. So the text says that for federal contractors and subcontractors, affirmative action must be taken by covered employers to recruit and advance qualified minorities, women, persons with disabilities, and covered veterans. Affirmative action include training programs, outreach efforts, and other positive steps. I'm reading this part. These procedures should be incorporated in the company's written personal policies. Employers with written affirmative action program must implement them, keep them on file, and update them annually. So now, a lot of employers are scared by affirmative action plan simply because they do not know much about them and look at it as a legal framework instead of considering its intent. The intent is to prevent discrimination, stereotypical thinking, and biases. If you only use standard databases, chances are that you will be unable to identify qualified minorities, women, persons with disabilities, or veterans, because traditional systems process resumes and do not identify people. So your ATS or traditional CRM will end up having you discriminate against veterans only because veterans' resumes do not read like standard resumes. You will end up discriminating against visually impaired people only because your website is not absolutely 100% ADA compliant. So a network-based CRM, basically a modern CRM that is 100% compliant, allows you to have a deeper and wider knowledge of these people who are interested in you. And you can offer more. You are not allowed to ask people for personal details, but you can give them the possibility to self-declare themselves if they want to, by creating circles to which they can subscribe. So this is the easiest way to show true outreach efforts and to actually proactively build a diversity strategy.
I love this because, typically when I was meeting the requirements for my affirmative action plan, I was sending an email or faxing a letter. Gosh, I was faxing to maybe the Professional Women's Association or the Veterans Association, or meeting them for a luncheon. But now here you can kind of customize. You can customize marketing campaigns and diversity campaigns based on people who are self-opting in, asking or self-identifying themselves for this information. So having a veterans circle is, I think, great. And then you can measure and really target those folks and not only try to recruit and hire them, but also work together and help understand, how you can help them, and then show them what it's like to work at your organization as a former member of the military.
Yeah, I agree. And, actually, with the right technology, with simply a modern technology, delivering on affirmative action plan is easy and is interesting. It's not a burden. It becomes part of very proactive strategy. It can be actually exciting.
I love it. I think this is a great thing because, it's the affirmative action plan. The old way of doing it is not really effective and frankly boring. It seems like you're kind of going through the motions, right? You're advertising in the Hispanic Professionals magazine, but you're not really interacting and engaging the community of people and being proactive. Let's talk a little bit more about the OFCCP and what they consider an internet applicant, because I know that there is a lot of conversation around this topic as it relates to someone as an internet applicant, whether they're in your CRM or your applicant tracking system.
Well, I'm not a labor attorney, and as you speak, I'm pulling out what the definition of an internet applicant is about, okay? And the OFCCP rules are actually pretty simple. An internet applicant is an individual who satisfies all four of the following criteria. The individual submitted an expression of interest in employment through the internet or related electronic data technologies. 2, the contractor considered the individual for employment in a particular position. 3, the individual's expression of interest indicated that the individual possesses the basic qualification for the position. And 4, the individual at no point in the contractor's selection process prior to receiving an offer of employment from the contractor removed himself or herself from further consideration or otherwise indicated that she was no longer interested in the position. So I can only recommend that people read the text because it's actually clearly written, and it's actually de-dramatizing the problem because it's pretty clear. And most of the time we're afraid of people we don't know. And of things we don't know. And in the reality, it's easy.
So when are members within your CRM or talent network considered a candidate according to the OFCCP?
So they are truly considered an applicant if they express interest for a specific job posted in the community or the network. Prior to this, they are just members of your network. They can check the job, see how their profile fares against a job requirement, but if they do not apply, they should not be considered an applicant. In fact, when candidates opt into your private talent network, you are no less bound than when you are a recruiter on LinkedIn, posting jobs on LinkedIn and receiving application via LinkedIn. So remember, OFCCP is an acronym for Office of Federal Contract Compliance Programs, and it does not even concern everybody on the planet. And again, it's important to remember that laws are intended to protect from abusive practices. So if anything, you always want to make sure that you give a fair chance to people in general. And it's more a matter of corporate ethics in the end. So, for example, lots of companies do not accept paper resumes any longer. This could be construed as being discriminatory. It's so simple to scan and parse a paper resume and transform it into a digital profile that it is absurd not to allow for this. And the vendors that do not allow you to do that are preventing you from being fair. So we enable organizations to do just that. If you have a paper resume, don't throw it away. Scan it, parse it, and you have a digital profile. In the same fashion, some systems are only accessible via desktop computers. This too could be construed as being discriminatory. Many people have smartphones today. More people have smartphones than desktop computers today. So any system should be accessible via a smartphone, and companies should not be charged for any smartphone or tablet interface. Again, in 2014, platform independence and full responsive design at no additional cost should just be a requirement, because as a company, you want to allow candidates to reach out to you by any means. As a company, you must keep, of course, records for 1 or 2 years, depending on the size of your company. But this rule can also protect you a lot. And in a way, the more data you have, the more likely you are protected if you happen to be in a situation to prove that you were acting in good faith. How could a candidate complain that you eventually discriminated against him or her if that candidate never showed up? Never showed up on your community, never showed any form of interest in your company compared to dozens of others. So serious data analytics will be a huge protection for employers down the road. In the end, employers have a lot of freedom. What is key is consistency in your business practices and your ability to relate to candidates with an open mind. In certain countries, and more specifically in Europe, it's even critical to be able to comply with data privacy requirements requested by candidates, and a modern CRM must accommodate for this too. So many questions of people about compliance and so forth are linked to the fact that they have the wrong systems, or that the system makes it so complicated that anything related to regulation becomes a nightmare, when actually it's all about being able to manage data. And if you have a modern CRM, it's pretty easy, actually.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk and enlighten us all about the new modern HR CRM. Where can people go to learn more about you or to connect with you today?
So they can go on the Talent Circle website. They can connect with everybody in the company very easily. They can connect with me directly. My email is mdd@talentcircles.com. And as you mentioned before, I'm often on Twitter. My Twitter handle is mddelphis. You can connect also with me on LinkedIn. I try to respond to any emails I receive. And you can also connect via the Facebook page of Talent Circles.
Marylene is probably one of the most social CEOs that I've come across in the HR technology space and beyond. So go ahead and tweet her, Facebook her, message her. She is extremely responsive and very quickly. I want to thank you for joining us today on the Workology podcast, hosted by me, Jessica Miller-Merrill, where we discuss the art and science of the workplace, HR, and recruitment. Until next time, you can visit Blogging for Jobs to listen to all our past episodes of Workology. Thanks so much for joining us.
Production services for the Workology podcast with Jessica Miller-Merrill, provided by Total Picture Media.